What would you do? Folks, if you conceal carry, it's important to understand use of force, when and in what situations you're authorized or justified in using deadly force, namely using your concealed carry gun. We're going to break down this video. It's a very short clip at CBS News. I'll put a link in the description if you want to watch the whole thing, but we're going to talk about what this individual did and the outcome. Let's get into it. So initially, this individual, who I'm going to show you the video clip in a second, he shot the aggressor, and initially he was not charged. It happened in the state of Florida. They have a stand your ground law. We'll talk about that in a little bit. He said, we have a stand your ground law, so I can't charge him, is what the local sheriff said. However, after reviewing the video, there was outrage in the community, and the case was eventually forwarded to the state for prosecution. It was brought before a grand jury. He was indicted, he was charged, he was convicted, and he was sentenced to 20 years. So let's break it down. This happened back in 2018 in the state of Florida. Before we begin, I need to say that I'm not an attorney and this is not legal advice. What we're doing here is we're breaking down this video, very short video clip, and I want to talk about some things that you should have in mind, or what your mindset should be if you carry concealed, as far as use of force and when you should even think about using your gun for self-defense. Every situation is different, and it's going to depend on your background, your training and experience, and what's going on in front of you at the time. But from this video, when I first saw this video, I had some obvious thoughts that came into my head about why he did what he did and what happened. We're going to break it down, and we're going to, hopefully, after you watch this video, you're going to have a better understanding about use of force and when you should de-escalate. So back in 2018, Michael Draka, 49, he shot Marquise McLaughlin after a fight broke out over a disabled parking spot, so a handicapped parking spot. So just to break it down with a quick summary, McLaughlin and his girlfriend and their kids pull into a handicapped parking spot. He gets out with one of the kids and goes in the convenience store. Draka goes up to McLaughlin's girlfriend, who stayed in the car, and confronts her about why she's parked in the parking spot that says it's for handicapped vehicles, because he does not see a placard on her car. They get into a verbal altercation, and now McLaughlin comes out of the convenience store and sees this going on. He pushes Draka to the ground. From that, I'll show you the video and you can see what happened next. So in the video, you see here that McLaughlin's coming out. He sees Draka confronting his girlfriend. He pushes him to the ground. Now Draka immediately, it looks like, draws his firearm. However, what I noticed right away is McLaughlin, upon seeing the gun, immediately turns to walk away. And then Draka shoots him anyway. So he shoots him as he's walking and turning away. It says in the report that he makes his way back into the store and collapses, and he eventually dies. Initially, like I said, Draka is not charged. Local sheriff says, well, we have a stand your ground law, so I can't charge him, is what he basically says. There's outrage. A case gets transferred to the state level. He's indicted. He's charged. He's convicted at trial. It was a very quick trial, I think 6 hours. The jury deliberated, and he got sentenced to 20 years in prison. As far as I know, he's still in prison. Again, this happened in 2018. I just want to break down a couple important facts that I noticed about this. And let me tell you, folks, this is one of the cases or scenarios that we discuss in detail in our course. And I strongly urge you to at least check out the information on the course. I'll put a link on the screen. You can get information on our online course. It's a 5-week online course. There's also a link in the description just to get more information. Myself and Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz, who's a court-recognized use of force expert, we go into this case in more detail and some other cases about use of force. So if you carry concealed, I strongly urge you to at least check out our online course, because we do go into much more detail on that. But getting back to this case, so Draka is brought in to the police department. He's questioned, he's interviewed, and he basically says, well, he felt threatened. He says, if he's going to hit me that hard with a blind side from the get-go, you know, what else should I expect? He basically says to police, he surprised me by pushing me to the ground, and I didn't know what to expect, so I was in fear for my life. He also tells them that a pet peeve of his is people parking in handicapped spots that shouldn't. So if he sees a car in a handicapped spot and they don't have a placard, then he confronts them, and it's a pet peeve of his, and he doesn't like that. Also, I should note that court documents reveal that Draka has been accused as an aggressor in 4 other road rage incidents between 2012 and 2018, and in 3 of those, prosecutors alleged that he threatened people with a gun. Now, he was never charged. I guess people drove away or no witnesses could confirm what he did. But there were those documented 4 cases, and 3 of them, the prosecutors say he used a gun. So this is his history, folks. Of course, Draka's lawyers argued that he acted in self-defense, and if they stressed Florida's stand your ground law. I want to talk about that. So I want to talk about the stand your ground law. I'm from New Jersey. New Jersey does not have a stand your ground law. In fact, in New Jersey, if you're in public and you're threatened, you're supposed to retreat if you can, complete safety. So what that means is if you're threatened, before you resort to force, if you have the option to retreat to complete safety, and it has to be complete safety. So if you're not sure, then that's different. But if you know that you can walk away or retreat from the confrontation, you're supposed to in a state like New Jersey. However, in Florida, the law was enacted which basically says you don't have to retreat, you can stand your ground, you can defend yourself with lethal force if necessary. So if necessary, if you feel like your life is in danger or you have that perceived threat of serious bodily injury or death, I want to point out that when you watch this video, we can say a lot about both parties, right? So you can say that Draka, and I've talked about this before, you should not be looking for confrontations when you're carrying a gun, because you always have to have that knowledge, and you should, that any confrontation, physical confrontation that you get into is going to involve at least one gun, the gun that you're carrying. The other guy might have a gun too, but there's going to be at least one gun. So if it escalates from verbal to physical, now you're dealing with trying to keep your gun, and then if it becomes a deadly force situation, you're going to have to answer to the fact that you initiated it, which I stressed in previous videos. You should not initiate or be the aggressor, and that's all going to come out if you're ever involved in a shooting. Who started it? Did you have an opportunity to walk away or de-escalate? And did you if you had that opportunity? So in this case, you can argue that Draka should not have approached McLaughlin's girlfriend. He should not, and the judge, I think, worded it something like, you've appointed yourself parking police with the handicap spot. So he said something like that during the sentencing or phase of the trial. So that's the first thing. You shouldn't be walking around looking for confrontations. So you see something that you think is not right, you call the police, right? You have them do it. That's their job, to handle stuff like that. It's not your job. And again, I've said this before, carrying a gun, a concealed carry gun, does not give you police powers. It does not give you a special shield that protects you. And it's not something to use to change people's behavior. So that's the first thing. He shouldn't have approached her, right? Because that's what started the whole thing. So the second thing I want to talk about is past behavior. It comes out in trial with Draka, his history of getting involved in 4 road rage incidents where he was the aggressor, and 3 of them he used his firearm from 2012 to 2018. He wasn't charged for whatever reason, but that is on record, and the prosecutors brought that up in court. The other thing is that he has a history of confronting people about the parking spaces. This is all in his background that the prosecutors, of course, used to charge and eventually convict him. So another thing you have to keep in mind, folks, you not only should you not be looking for confrontations if you carry concealed, you should be very wary about posting things online or social media that have anything to do with use of force or violence. And what I mean by that is, if you see a video about some violent episode or incident and you click that like button or make a comment, a derogatory comment, that can be used against you later. Just keep in mind that even if you delete that post, social media companies and accounts retain that information for a certain period of time. So even if you posted it and commented on it in a negative way and then decided 2 days later, I really shouldn't have done that, and you take it down, the police can still subpoena that service provider and find those comments or those things that you posted back to a certain point in time. So keep that in mind. You shouldn't be doing anything that can be used against you later. The third and probably the most important thing in this video that I want to bring up is the fact that even though Drake is in Florida where they have a stand your ground law, and I know other states do, most other states have some sort of a stand your ground law, that does not mean you automatically get to go right to deadly force. And we talk about this in more detail in our online course where we have kind of a sit down, more like a podcast, and we break these scenarios down and we talk about them. So stand your ground means you don't have to retreat. So if you look at this video, we put it up again, you see that McLaughlin pushes Drake down. So you could argue, now there's no audio so we can't hear what's going on. You could argue and you could say, you know what, I could see why he would feel threatened. He would feel threatened that he's about to get seriously hurt, or maybe he's saying, I'm going to kill you. We don't know what McLaughlin's saying to him, but maybe he is using threatening words. And you could say, you could argue that Drake felt threatened, right? So maybe he's in a stand your ground law state, so he doesn't have to retreat. He doesn't have to crawl away or run away. He's in that position. He's on the ground. He's at a disadvantage. He's older than McLaughlin. Maybe he's not in good physical shape. We don't really know all these details. So you could argue that he's justified in taking his gun out. So if you say for a second, well, he probably felt threatened. He probably felt like, you know, he was in danger, serious danger. So maybe he's justified in drawing his gun and taking it out. Maybe even pointing it at his aggressor, right? But as soon as McLaughlin sees that gun, you see in the video him turn. He turns to go away. He starts to walk away and Drake shoots him anyway. So that is the main point here, folks. You need to be able to de-escalate. So you're in a convenience store, somebody pulls out a knife or a gun and tries to rob the clerk, and you pull out your gun and you tell them to drop it. And let's say they do drop it, right? They drop the gun, they drop the knife, or they run away. You can't shoot them. The threat is no longer there. You have to stand down or de-escalate. And that's what he did not do in this case. Again, we can argue that he shouldn't have confronted her about the parking spot. That's what started the whole thing. And he had a history of that. That came out, right? And then you could argue that, you could say that McLaughlin shouldn't have pushed him, right? Why did he come out and just push him? They were having a verbal altercation and he came right out and he made it physical. You could argue that he shouldn't have done that. You could also argue that Drake felt threatened because he's on the ground. This guy's, it seems from the video that he's bigger than him, probably stronger, and he's menacing, right? Menacing behavior. Maybe he's using threatening words like, I'm going to kill you if you get up, or, you know, if you take another step. So you could argue that Drake felt threatened from that. And then you could even argue that he might have been justified in taking his gun out at that point. But as soon as McLaughlin sees that gun and turns to go walk away, the threat, in my opinion, is over or about to be completely gone. He's turning to walk away. And he shoots him anyway. To me, it's a no-brainer. I don't know how that initial sheriff said he can't charge him. If he saw that video, I don't know how he could come to that conclusion. But nevertheless, eventually he was charged, convicted, and sentenced. And as far as I know, he's in prison currently. So these are the kinds of things you need to keep in mind, folks, if you carry concealed, that even if you're in a state that has a stand your ground law or some type of stand your ground law, that does not mean you can automatically go to lethal force. And I've said this before in other videos, and we get into this in the course, the online course, our 5-week course, that you should be able to fight with your gun, meaning with your gun in the holster, you should be able to physically fight somebody. Or with your gun out in your hand in the ready position, you should be able to fight, because certain situations, they may not be deadly force situations. So you may have to use, and here's the thing, folks, every state you're justified in defending yourself to a degree, right? And as far as the level of force, it depends on what level of force you're facing. Is it in your house? Is it in public? Do you have a duty to retreat? Do you not have a duty to retreat? Depends on those other factors, of course, but just because you're in a stand your ground law state, that means you can stay there and fight. You don't have to retreat. You can fight, but it doesn't mean it's automatic justification for a deadly force. It may become a deadly force situation, but it may not start out as a deadly force situation. In this case, you could argue that at that point where Drake pulls out his gun, maybe he did feel threatened and maybe he was justified in pulling his gun out. But to me, watching everything that transpired, I don't think he was justified in actually shooting because, again, McLaughlin sees the gun, turns to walk away, and he gets shot anyway. So hopefully watching a video like this and talking about a case like this will get you to be thinking about different scenarios. So if you're ever in the same or similar circumstance, hopefully you have all the information to make the right decision based on what's going on in front of you. If you like this video, folks, please hit that like button and share it. Also consider subscribing if you're not a subscriber, and hit the notification bell so you know when we release new videos. Also, check out my new book that just became a bestseller on Amazon in 8 countries and 24 different categories. There's a link in the description if you want to check out the book. It's available on Amazon. Thanks for watching, take care, and stay safe.